Hello and welcome to Geeky Guys. If you're into geeky things, we're the guys for you. And today on the channel we are having a look at the Phantom Premonition pre-constructed deck and going through the precon power-up deck upgrades that we like what we did with the Elvish Empire pre-constructed deck. This is a fairly budget version of this deck. But before we get into looking at what this deck is doing and what's it all about, and upgrading it and taking cards out and putting cards in and whatnot and all that sort of stuff, I just want to quickly go over the cards that are in this deck that are over $2, that have some, value over $2, and the total value of the reprints within. Again, I'm not going over any of the new cards that are in these decks because, again, I can't get solid prices for them all, and even these cards that I'm going to be talking about can't really get proper full prices for them because prices are in flux a little bit since these decks have come out. So you can sort of find a lot of these things having some issues with the price. So just bear that in mind. But Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, Ghostly Prison, which is a card that is quite good, but I think it's sort of just lost a lot of value, in my opinion, at least. I don't think it's that good of a card, really. I think it is good in certain circumstances, but I don't think it's good enough. I think, like, Teferi's Protection has just edged this card way out. I just think you need that 1 or 2 turns to really fog a couple of key attacks or, sort of things like that. But anyway, then Brago, King Eternal, he got a reprint not that long ago, before Double Masters though. But his price was hovering very high, above $10, I believe, when it was last reprinted. But that was almost a year or so ago, I believe. Now I'm not 100% sure, but I do recall, I think, seeing it reprinted, within the last year or so. But the total value of the reprints here in the deck is about $36, $36.11, to be exact now. But these cards, again, I'm going by the market value price. I'm not going by what independent vendors or what have you are selling them for. I'm just going by what I've seen the market value for these cards at. Now, some of the cards that are the new cards from the Commander decks certainly hold some value. I'm not 100% sure, again, how much. And some of the cards from Kaldheim that are actually also propping up this deck a little bit will have some amount of value. I don't know how much, because I think most of it's commons and uncommons and whatnot, and some of the more common rares and whatnot, or lower value rares. So, there's that. But the thing is, this is what we're working with as a base, and we want to put in some better cards just to power up this deck and bring it to some, decent games and not just play out of the box. This is if you want to do this. I know there are some people who want to play this out of the box, and there are people that want to go down a CEDH route with this, or want to try to go down a CEDH route with this. I don't think it's that powerful, but certainly it does have some amount of power because, the Commander, which we'll be talking about now, Reyna the Ever Watchful, lets us foretell a spell for 0 mana each turn. So that is quite powerful. Gavi Nestwarden was a recent commander that sort of came out last year-ish, I think. Yeah, last year's major commander set of releases. with Ikoria, yeah, she allows you to cycle once per turn for 0, which is a very powerful mechanic. And like foretell, the problem here is there's not that many foretell cards, and that is troublesome. And also the other troublesome thing is there's also just not that many really good foretell cards that exist that we want to try to fiddle with. But I think there's other cards that we actually want to quote unquote fiddle with, or what have you. We want to stick quite a few other sort of cards into this deck, and we'll be going through some of the cards that we want to try to add in, and some of the cards that we want to cut out of this deck. Now, this deck was quite a difficult deck to figure out what to do with it. It's not straightforward exactly what you want to do with this deck, which does leave it open to personal preferences and whatnot, and wanting to build it perhaps more to that CDH or what have you direction, or might want to build it more towards a more casual direction, or what have you. So there's those options that are out there to everyone. So I certainly wanted to build this deck in a more casual way, as I tend to do anyway. But that's just one of the things that I wanted to do with this deck in building it. And it was quite a difficult process of trying to figure out what you should do with this deck, because, again, as I say, that very clear. It's not like, this is like, do this and, sort of, it's not strictly a foretell deck. That's what I'm trying to sort of say, I guess, is the most part. But that's the problem with it. It's like, well, what else is this deck doing? And it's just sort of very hard to sort of figure out. There is a flicker sort of sub-theme, but I think what we're looking at a little bit here is just like exile things for value. That's the idea that I'm trying to sort of go down to a degree. But also, there's this little piece of text here that I actually want to sort of conjure around, or sort of base what I'm trying to sort of do with this deck around, which is the simple part of saying create a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. That is the part that I think we want to focus in on. And that means that, hey, white blue has a token deck. Well done, white blue, for getting out of being strictly like Flicker Tribal or strictly Control Tribal. You've done it. Well done. But still there is some flickering value to be had here, I think. But I don't think this is just strictly Flicker Tribal, but certainly there will be some stuff that does flicker in this deck. But again, I do think that we want to go down this route of creating tokens and whatnot. So now we're going to look at some of the cards that we would maybe want to put into this deck. Now, there are some cards that we cannot put in this deck for budget reasons, and we are sticking to a slight budget with this deck. But, I will talk about a couple of the cards that I think are really good. If you just so happen to have them and you want to go down this route, now, of course, again, as I say, everyone has their own tastes and their own wants and their own desires and whatnot. So if you don't want to go down a token build or what have you, then you might want to watch another deck doctorate or whatever you want to do, a deck upgrade, a deck guide for this deck. This is the way that I'm going about it, though. So one of the first cards that I would think about is like Anointed Procession. This is one of the best cards that you have in these colors. This just doubles up your tokens. It's really good. Unfortunately, everyone knows it's really good, and it's about $25. So that's pretty much half of what the budget that we're sort of working with here. We're working on a rough $50 budget. We're not strictly sticking to a $50 budget, but we're sort of trying to stick roughly around there. Not trying to be like, oh well, lol, $70. Oh, accidentally it's now $70. Well, actually no, we've actually got to find $20 to cut then in that regard. But anyway, Divine Visitation, that's a very good card. Making any of our just janky 1/1 tokens or whatever into 4/4 angels is very good. Of course, again, if you have this card, toss it in there. It's very good. But we have to actually try to find some more budget options than these. These are very good, and as I say, put them in if you have them. But we need to find other options. Song of the World, so I think this is a little bit slow, but it is there, it is here, and it does do something, and it does sort of what we want, but I think we can find somewhat better, and I think we can find some more aggressive things to a degree as well. We don't just want flyers, we don't just want, whatever. We don't just want the spirits from our commander, but I think flying's probably the best way to go about this, because flyers, even if these flyers are small, we can buff them in other ways, but even if these flyers are small, they're at least evasive, and that's one of the things that I think that I'm trying to go down the route of with this deck, is that this is just like a, evasive flyers token deck for the most part, and just getting value off of other cards and whatnot. So we've got Taurand, Sky Summoner, and he's quite good. We don't have a huge amount of instant and sorcery spells, but we certainly have a number of instant sorcery spells. And again, unfortunately, it's sort of building itself towards being this sort of semi-like blue-white control deck already to a degree, but mostly we want to be casting instant and sorceries that draw us cards, make us tokens, do other things for us, that help us out, that actually, prolong our game plan rather than just shutting other players down. But we do have some removal, and some of that removal is on counter spells and whatnot. But, again, we don't just want to be like, control tribal, lol. We actually want to be like trying to win the game with some form of strategy that just so happens to be part of some of the spells that we're using. Murmuring Mystic also is quite a good one. I think just the redundancy of this, and again, it gives us flyers. Most of the spells that we want to try to cast in this deck are going to be instant sorceries. For the most part, like not all of them, again, but most of them that are really important. We really need more bodies, at least in my point of view, for what this deck is trying to do in my version. Again, so that we can close out the game somehow and win the game, because we can draw a million cards or what have you, not literally, but again, we can draw a lot of cards and then be just like durdling and durdling and durdling and not really getting anywhere. Our opponent's life totals aren't changing. Their deck size really isn't changing. We need a strategy to actually win. We need something to actually kill our opponents one way or another, or we need some strategy to do something with what we're doing. So this is the route I'm going down again. Some good card draw options just here. Binding of Thassa, this is pretty good. Just casually the ability as well to tap it and make your opponents attack this turn if able. Sometimes if we've got a few too many blockers or just a sort of scary blocker or whatever, or perhaps we do have Ghostly Prison out. Maybe it will work for us where the opponent's just like, well, I don't want to have to pay 2 and risk some bad blocks or whatever just to attack the blue player or whatever. But that is the best option a lot of the time. But again, sometimes it's just one of those things they sort of have to do this, where they have to attack the other opponent, and it just gives us some sort of semi-free card draw as well, so that's pretty good. Omnis Seas, just getting a few counters on this and eventually making 8/8s. If we can find a way to sort of draw 8 cards all at once and then sort of sacrifice the token to draw 8 cards or something like this, or just like draw equal to the greatest power or something like that, then we just draw 8 more cards, we get 8 more counters, we get another creature or whatever, we get we keep making 8/8s with this, and it's just fine just if it makes a couple 8/8s or whatever. It doesn't matter that much if it never makes a creature at all. It's just going to sit there, and if we get something off of it that's good, if we're late game and we really don't want this sort of thing, we can just cycle it away, which is just fine too. Nadir Kraken, this one pretty good too. Just whenever we draw a card, we're getting to pay 1, and we're gonna get a tentacle and a counter on our Kraken. So our Kraken's gonna get big, and we're gonna get lots of little tentacles everywhere. So that's pretty good too. Jace's Sanctum, again, we want some form of sort of semi-ramp for instant and sorceries. This works as well with some of the foretell stuff that we're doing. Cheapens them, helps us, even if we're zeroing some of the foretell stuff, which there's again not very much of, but even if we're zeroing a foretell once per turn or whatever, we still might want to cast a foretell spell again. So, just having that one additional, cheapness or mana reduction is pretty good. When we cast an instant sorcery, scry 1. Scrying 1 can be very good. Again, if we find that there's a bad card on the top, which most of the time, unfortunately, I think there is, I think that scry actually just 90% of the time, just for me, is don't even worry about what it is that much. Put it to the bottom. Because the thing is, 9 times out of 10, if you know what it is, you're just going to go, oh, well, that's disappointing. I knew what it was, and now it's not really any good. Even if you think, oh, yeah, that's still okay, unless it's something amazing, it's just like, nah, put it to the bottom. A lot of the time, in my opinion. Next, more removal that we're looking at squeezing in here. Reality Shift exiles a creature an opponent controls. Well, mostly a creature an opponent controls. We might, in a blue moon, exile our own creature. I don't know why we would do that, but, and they get a 2/2. But just again, exile-based removal. We want exile-based removal so that we can get a spirit off of our commander. Same thing with Swords to Plowshares. This is just good removal, and so is Reality Shift. But we especially want the exile-based removal if we can find it, and if we can find it cheaply. Well, not just cheaply as in CMC-wise, but cheaply as in dollars-wise. But these are fairly cheap for the most part, so we want to toss these in if we can. Dosage of Perfection's quite a good card as well. Just making more creatures for us. Then when it flips, it's giving our creatures, the creatures that it made, +2, +1, and flying. So that's pretty good. We're getting some 3/2 flyers out of this when it flips. And then just like making a 1/1 wizard as well. So it just keeps making more dudes for us once it's flipped, so that's pretty good as well. Now, of course, we're sort of on this semi-instant speed deck, and we're sort of on this sort of semi like control sort of style, I guess, to a degree. But we're more on this like instant speed value engine to a degree as well. Whatever. I don't know how we're blue white flash for the most part. This is what we're trying to do. So Wavebreak Hippocamp is a good card that we want to put in. When we cast a spell each turn, basically we draw a card. That's a really good effect, just drawing more cards, getting us more gas in our hands so that we can find either the cards that we need to close out the game or the cards that we need to answer the threats that our opponents are trying to win the game with. Nadir of Hidden Coves, as long as it's not our turn, our spells cost one less to cast. So that's pretty good. Again, this instant speed value, gives us extra ramp on opponent's turn. Nimbus of Frost also, whenever we cast instant sorcery, the main thing is tapping a creature that an opponent controls, then getting in for some, flying beatdowns with this. And it also gets bigger because we've cast a non-creature spell. So just making this big, getting rid of a few of the blockers that are in the way. We can just draw a few cards or whatever with a sorcery or whatever. And just then tap down a couple of creatures or just sort of scry or whatever. We really want a lot of cheap cantrips and sort of things like that, or cheap spells, or we want to reduce the cost of a lot of our spells so that we can cast a lot of spells so that we can tap down a lot of things, or what have you. Keeper of the Cord, this is a new one from Commander Legends. Now, this does two things for us. One, it makes tokens for us. Now, it won't make those tokens all the time for us because sometimes we'll have the most creatures, but just the value of it, making it 1/1 every now and again, that's fine. And it just helps us, sort of keep parity for the most part. Getting us a land each turn for when we have less lands. Now, we're not in a green deck, so we might probably, for the most part, be behind. So that's just the position we're going to be in naturally for the most part, no matter what part of the turn we go. Certainly we'll have some of our mana rocks and whatnot in this deck, but we probably won't have as many lands as what some of our opponents might be having. So this just keeps us finding our lands, keeps us dropping our lands into play, which is really good. So that's what we want, especially since it's at every end step. Pava of Steel Legion. This is one from Commander Legends. I'm not sure about this because the way it makes tokens isn't quote-unquote for free or doesn't trigger off of anything that we're actually doing, but just buffing up our tokens is a good effect, but we might not put this in. I've just sort of put it in here to go, yeah, maybe if you want to go down this token route a little bit more, I think you would go with something like this, or if you want to really sort of go a little bit more in that direction, then I think that's a bit better, but I think there's better things that we can maybe put in this deck over it. Mentor of the Meek, a lot of the creatures that we're going to be playing in this deck aren't very big, and we're going to be making a fair few tokens, as I sort of said, and a lot of them aren't going to have much power. For the most part, like late game, yeah, sure, we might have some other things that buff our stuff, but again, we're just not going to have that many, and just it's a free roll for the most part, just to run this card. It's not the best card, but we'll put it in and probably get a few cards off of it. So, it just sort of okay enough. Verge Rangers, this one, it came in the Commander decks, and I think this is quite good. I've seen it being played here and there, and I've played with it a little bit. It is a little bit hit or miss sometimes, but I think I like it a lot better than something like whatever it is. The one that you look at the top card, the not Omen Kill, but the new vehicle and the equipment, the surveyor scope and the new vehicle. I can't remember what its name is, but basically when you attack with them, you look at the top card. Then if it's a land, you can play it. That's a good effect. Plus, again, like, you're looking at it, you're not revealing it to your opponents, so that is good. Like, if you, like, pull a land off of it, what does it matter? Like, oh, that's so much revealed information that I had a land on the top at that time. You don't want to reveal if you have an instant or sorcery or a creature or whatever else off the top. You don't want to reveal those things. So this being able to look for you, but not for your opponents, means that, you can keep that information secret, and you can still get the value of playing lands sometimes off of this. So very good. Monastery Minter are also quite a good one. Now, it doesn't have flying, and it doesn't create tokens that have flying, but it's still very good, and it, sort of gives us things that we want. And we want to be on this token plan. We want to be making things that, can overwhelm our opponents in one way or another. Boris Challenger, just quickly, this was in a Commander deck a couple of years ago, I think it was. I'm not sure. It's sort of mostly just ramp for the most part, but it also gets a couple of lands to our hands sometimes as well. But, if this only gets us one land to the battlefield, we're happy. Then it's just a 2/1 flyer. So it's done its job for the most part. And, flyers sometimes is relevant. Alrund. Actually, I looked at this card and I thought to myself, there's no way that this is going to be within budget for us. But I was surprised that Alrund, like just the regular one, and again, we're sort of going for the very basic versions of cards for the most part to try to be as cheap as possible, is only like $3 or $4 or so, or what have you, $2 or $3. Haka, the Whispering Raven, yeah, I don't know how relevant Haka is to us, but he's there, and sometimes we'll use him to scry to or whatever, or he's just a janky 2/3 flyer sometimes. So, maybe that's worth it, and maybe someone's on 2 life, maybe, or here or there, or whatever, or we only need a couple more damage to kill somebody, and it might be relevant, so never know. But we're mainly using this for the front half, and, he works well with Foretell, and if we can sort of use Harker sometimes to scry to, then we can sort of know what's on the top of our deck if we have 5 mana and be like, okay, end step, I know what the top 2 cards are, so I'm definitely going to draw at least 2 because I know, or at least one of them, because I know what one of them, and I can name one of the types, what have you. Cosma, just like throwing this in there is pretty good too, because we're just going to be making land drops here, and as well, funnily enough, it exiles itself, which just so happens to work with our commander, which is funny enough as well. So this does really work well. So when we're just sort of running low on lands, we're just going to bring this back and then just draw a bunch of cards so that we can hopefully draw into more lands, or just draw into more cards in general anyway, because eventually we're going to draw into the lands anyway, one way or another. Cosmos Charger. I'm surprised they didn't put this in the deck, but they can't put everything in the deck, I suppose. They've got to leave room for people to actually upgrade it. But this is really good. We're really trying to be mostly foretell or what have you, at least for the most part, or some things that sort of give us extra value during other players' turns. This is a 3/3 flyer with flash, and we can foretell it for 3 mana from the foretell zone, so that's pretty good too. Doomscar. This is probably one of the best cards that we've got in the foretell deck. Again, it's sort of hard to be foretell tribal. I think you just run foretell cards for the most part for value, but we're going all in on foretell and exiling and sort of that sort of theme for the most part. So we want this, and again, we might wrath some of our own stuff sometimes, once in a blue moon, but then again, if we're in the position where we're just going to die or we really need to get rid of the creatures our opponents control and there's no other way, then this is a really good option. It's just a good option as well if we just so happen to be at more cards in hand than what we can contain, that we can just put this into the foretell zone and just be like, oh, well, now we don't have to discard it and now we still can cast it. So that's the big value of, a lot of these cards that do have foretell, is just being able to still have access to casting them and whatnot. Secret God-Favored, it's just a flash version of, I can't remember the creature now, but, one of the Banishing Light style creatures, basically. Leonin, whatever its name is, I can't remember. So, this is pretty good, just exiling a thing, and we want exile effects. Clarion Spirit, second spell each turn, create a 1/1 white spirit creature with flying. I don't know, but second spell is a little bit worse than just like if you cast a spell or whatever, or if you cast a spell during an opponent's turn, or if you cast a spell with foretell or whatever, those sorts of things. But maybe we still want it, but we'll see. Shepherd of the Cosmos returns a thing with cost 2 or less from the graveyard to the battlefield. It's pretty good as well, so we want to find maybe space for this. Starheim Corset. Now, we don't have that many artifact or enchantments. Most of the artifacts we have are our mana rocks, but we still want to make them a bit cheaper so that we can sort of do a bit more with what we've got, and just like getting that slight mana reduction sometimes is pretty good. We still have some enchantments as well, and if we just so happen to be able to cast them for a little bit less, then we're happy with that. Just a couple other cards that I want to quickly go over, like Knight of the White Orchid. This is very good. We can definitely find some space to put this. I know there's a couple of mana rocks that are in here that I don't really want to keep in here. I'm not going to really go over them that much in here. But the white one that's in here, I'm probably going to just ditch that one, the one that comes in tapped, for this. Pretty easy. Some of the lands that we can add as well. Prairie Stream, Glacial Fortress, Mystic Gate, Nimbus Maze. These are fairly budget lands that we can easily put in. Also, Port Town and the cycling lands, Lonely Sandbar, Secluded Steppe, of course. We can also put Evolving Wilds and Terramorphic Expanse into here. So, yep, those are more things that we can put into this mana base to make it much better. So, I want to go through now some of the cards that we really want to take out. And, one of the first things is all these tap lands. Meandering River, Azorius Gilgate, Tranquil Cove, Sajiri Refuge, the new one from the Kaldheim Glacial Floodplain, also Azorius Chancery. Look, we have no time for this. Ain't nobody got time for this. And like again, like the mana base of these decks is just very bad. There's way too many basics. At least some people will say, "Oh well, there's not that many," but still there is way too many really for this deck. And what we need and whatnot. So we want to take out a couple basics here and there. We don't want to take out too many. But yeah, we definitely want to take out some of those. One of the first cards after cutting those very bad lands is Replicating Ring. It's not terrible if it goes off, but it's getting it to go off that's the problem. It's just gonna take so very long, and by the time it goes off, like, yeah, then what? Kind of thing, you know, like, sure, it's given us some mana, maybe, over the time that we've had it, and then once we sort of get all the counters on it, we make a whole bunch more of them. It's just like, okay, now we have 8 more mana from, you know, sitting around for 8 more turns or whatever. You know. So I'm just like, well, what does that do? It's so bad. It's like, it is for free, and like once in a blue moon you'll get there, but I just don't think you should rely on that sort of thing. I think no, this is just unreliable, and just like, no, we don't want this. We just no, we're gonna move on because this will make me mad. Hero of Burtgard. This really just isn't on our plan that much. It is okay, but it's just not on our plan. Our plan, for the most part, is to be making tokens, not putting +1/+1 counters on a creature. So this just won't really do much for us. It's a good way to go tall, and just that's not what we're doing. And this isn't our commander, so we can't even get in for commander damage with this. And again, it just doesn't have evasion, so it's not going to get in there that much. Now, in the last deck, I made a controversial pick for a cut, which was Sol Ring and Arcane Signet. In this deck, we just can't do that. We cannot cut Arcane Signet and Sol Ring from this deck. It would be tempting to do it, and the one reason that I would be tempted to try to do it is just budget reasons. That's the only reason that I wanted to cut them for a moment. But just unfortunately, we just don't have enough really good options to put into this deck, so we just cannot cut these cards. They're too good, and we just don't have enough other options since we're not in green to cut with these, or to cut in for these rather. Another card we probably cut is Migratory Route. Yeah, sure, it makes birds, and it has cycling, or it has basic land cycling, but I just don't think it does enough for us that warrants it staying here. It if it did more, I think we'd keep it. But there's just better things, and there's better things that we're going to put in, so I don't think it keeps the cut for the most part. Storm Herd, this is actually quite good, but unfortunately, it's just so much mana. That's the main problem. That's the thing that lets this thing down. Sure, we'll make 50 something Pegasuses or whatever. We might make 30 Pegasuses or whatever. We probably won't. That's what the dream scenario is always with people. Like, oh, I'll make 40 Pegasuses. But by the time you cast this, you're probably on, 10 or 20 life at the most, for the most part. You might even be on less, so it's just not that cost effective. You won't get that many Pegasus off of it. So, you're not really worth it. Stout Land Elementalist, you already have to reveal a giant card or pay an additional 2 for this guy. And when he attacks, we can't cast an instant or sorcery for free, essentially. Yeah, sure, but again, we really want to be much lower and have much cheaper cantrips and whatnot in this deck and whatnot than what this is wanting us to do. We might have a couple cards in this deck that are more expensive, but for the most part, we're just going to have a lot of fairly free cantrips and whatnot. Cloud Goat Ranger, it doesn't do enough. Like, if it said whenever we cast a spell or whenever we do something, then it might go in. It just doesn't. Gold Knight Commander, I was thinking about this for a little bit, but I don't think it's quite good enough. It's so close to being there, but again, we're sort of making this list and saying, well, we'll maybe put it on this list of outs for the most part, but I don't think we really want this. Just giving a +1/+1 to creatures we control till end of turn. If it was +1/+1 counters, then it'd be good. But it is only that one turn, and again, it's only when other creatures enter and whatnot. So it's not as good as some of the other options. Of course, if you have Cathar's Crusade, I wasn't going to mention it in this video or whatever, but if you have that, put it in. I'd like to put it in, but it is like $25-$30 or whatever, so we can't afford to put it in here. Evangel of Heliod, yeah, it only does what it's doing when it enters the battlefield, so that's just not, really that good. Like, again, we do have some flicker stuff, but we just don't have enough, and we're just not really going heavy on that plan. So I just think you should take it out. For the most part, it does make tokens again, so maybe we'll think about it, but I don't think it'll quite make the cut, in my opinion. Arcane Artisan, I'm not sold on this. I could be sold on it sometimes, because it is, if we're choosing ourselves, that's okay to a degree, because we get a free thing out of it, which is most of what our deck's trying to do. Create free flyers and whatnot. Get free advantages for the most part. We've got to tap this thing down, though. And it's just a 0/3. So I'd rather be more reliant on instant and sorceries and whatnot than this sort of thing. So I'm not sure, but yeah, I just don't think so. Miss Meadow Witch is good to a degree. It does protect our creatures sometimes, or if we have other effects, we can sometimes get rid of opponents' creatures for a little while and whatnot. But we don't really want to do that, because especially on ETB creatures, especially on ETB creatures, they're just going to get their ETBs again. So we don't want to do that to our opponents unless our opponents are going to help us take down some of our other opponents. But how can we trust them, those devious opponents? Mist Raven? No. Returning a thing to, someone's hand, especially for 4 mana and not instant speed, no. Meteor Golem, same basic deal here. 7 mana and just destroys the thing. We can do better than this. Banishing Light, definitely. It doesn't have instant speed, and it's just too easy to interact with this enchantment-based permanent. Of course, it is easy to interact with any permanent that's sort of like on the battlefield, like the creature that we were talking about earlier. But we can sort of find at least one that is instant speed, so at least we've got that leg up to cast it in instant speed. So we just don't want this. Angel of Finality, this can be good, exiling all things from a target player's graveyard, but it is target player, and it is for 4 mana, so, 4 mana, so, yeah. Inspired things, for the most part, just draw 3, and it's a 5/5 flyer. And then, creating those Thopters, that's okay, but it's a lot of mana, and, no. There's a couple other cards in here that I think we want to cut, but they're here and there for the most part, so I think we've sort of made a fairly good path here, and now we can move on to actually making decisions and seeing how many cards we want to add and see how many cards we can cut for the cards that we want to add. So let's check out what we've taken out and what we've put in. As I said, what we've taken out, we discussed most of the cards that we were taking out or were thinking about taking out. It came out to 30 cards. I know that the image on the screen and whatnot actually says 28, and there's 2 cards missing, but it actually is 30. I actually added 2 more cards to the list to take out very quickly at the last minute, so I forgot to put them on, so sorry about that. But anyway, yes, so what we're putting in is also 30 cards, which lines up with what we've got, and this is quite a a long list, and it's sort of hard to sort of follow what's going on with these lists and seeing what's actually going on. So we're going to have a bit of a look at the finished, or the basically finished deck here. This isn't the full deck list or image of the deck. Can't quite fit it all onto the screens, so unfortunately this is what we've got. It's much better than the other one though. This is actually the screen, or the type of screen that I wanted to put onto the last one, but I actually put the wrong screen on accidentally, so again, whoops, my bad. But this is our finished deck, and again, we've got the full deck list on our Patreon, so if you want to go and check out this deck and you want to put it together for yourself, you might want to fiddle with it yourself as well and take some things out that I wasn't able to take out, add a bit more of a budget to it, and just do some more with it. If you really want to build this deck, you can take it in another direction. As I said, there's many ways to take this deck. But, please remember that the success of channels like this is based on viewers like you, so please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing if you would like to support this content. You can also get social with us on our Discord and on our Facebook. If you would like to further support the channel, you can go onto our Patreon All links are in the description. Thank you for your support. It really means a lot. I hope you have enjoyed this video here today. And if you have, I hope you will come back for another one. See you then.